For most of recorded galactic history, the stars followed a predictable pattern. Empires rose, expanded, consumed weaker civilizations, and moved on. Power flowed in one direction, from the advance of primitive, from the many to the few. It was a law so consistent that no one questioned it anymore. Earth was supposed to be just another example. The planet sat quietly on the edge of an unremarkable star system, orbiting a yellow sun that barely earned a footnote in Verit Dominion archives. Its inhabitants had not colonized other worlds. They had not joined interstellar trade routes. They had not even mastered faster-than-light travel. By every known metric, humanity ranked as a minor, underdeveloped species, which was why the Dominion sent a fleet, not a small expedition, not a symbolic show of force. They sent 9,900 warships. High Commander Vorith co-stood on the command dais of the eternal conquest, watching the invasion armada assemble in real space. The transition from hyperspace had gone flawlessly. One moment the system had been empty, the next it was filled with steel and energy and purpose. Thousands of ships drifted into formation, blotting out the distant stars. Destroyers, carriers, siege vessels, planet crackers. Each one was a monument to conquest. Vorith Kull felt a familiar sense of satisfaction as tactical displays updated around him. Green indicators signaled full readiness. Weapons charged, shields stable, supply chains intact. His fleet represented centuries of refinement, doctrine perfected across thousands of wars. Below them, Earth rotated slowly, unaware. A blue and green sphere, fragile and exposed. "Report," Vorith said calmly. "Fleet integrity at 100%. His second-in-command replied. No hostile activity detected. No orbital defenses of note. Planetary military assets remain atmospheric. Vorith allowed himself a faint smile. Exactly as predicted. The Dominion's analysts had been thorough. Humanity possessed nuclear weapons, yes, but those were crude tools. Impressive only to species that had not yet learned how to bend gravity or collapse stars. Their conventional forces were numerous but divided, their political structures fractured, their technology uneven. They were not ready for this. "They haven't responded to our arrival," an officer noted. "No transmissions. No diplomatic signals. They will," Vorith said, "once we speak." He turned his gaze to the central display, where Earth loomed larger with every passing second. This was not his first invasion. He had overseen the fall of worlds with far greater defenses than this one. Planets protected by orbital rings, shield networks, ancient relic weapons. All of them had broken. "Begin the declaration," he ordered. A pulse of energy rippled outward as the Dominion's broadcast systems activated. The message propagated across every frequency humanity used, translated instantly into thousands of local languages. "People of Earth, this is High Commander Vorith Kull of the Verit Dominion. Your world has been claimed. Surrender all weapons. Submit all governing authorities. Resistance will result in extinction. Simple, efficient, final." The message crossed the void in silence. Then they waited. 7 hours later, the first signs of chaos appeared on Earth. Satellites shifted orbits. Military bases went to high alert. Civilian networks erupted with confusion and fear. The species was reacting exactly as expected. What surprised Vorith was what did not happen. There was no response, no plea, no outrage, no attempt at negotiation. Just silence. "Perhaps they are debating internally," Terran suggested. "Their political systems appear inefficient." "Perhaps," Vorith replied, though his attention remained fixed on the planet. Time passed. More satellites went dark. Communications traffic spiked, then dropped. Entire regions of the planet seemed to go quiet. "They are shutting things down," a sensor officer said slowly. "Reducing emissions, masking signals. Hiding," someone laughed. "From us?" Vorith did not laugh. He had seen many reactions over 3 centuries of warfare. Panic, defiance, desperation, betrayal, collapse. But this deliberate withdrawal into silence was unusual. "Scan deeper," he ordered. The sensors complied. pushing through layers of atmosphere and crust, mapping energy flows and material movements. The data that returned caused several officers to hesitate. There is increased activity underground. One reported carefully. Deep facilities. Large-scale power fluctuations. Military bunkers? Tarrant asked. Some, the officer admitted, but not like anything we've seen before. These installations are extensive. Vorth folded his arms behind his back. Primitive species prepare on the surface, he said. They fortify cities, build walls. They do not hollow out their world. The bridge fell quiet. Below them, Earth continued its silent rotation. No ships launched to meet them. No weapons fired. No word spoken. The waiting stretched on. 20 hours after the declaration, Vorth felt irritation creep in. Not fear, not doubt, impatience. They understand us, he said firmly. They are choosing not to answer. Shall we begin the demonstration? Tarrant asked. Vorth considered it. A limited strike. The destruction of a military installation. Enough to shock, not enough to ruin the planet. It was the standard procedure. But something about this silence unsettled him. Send the vanguard. He decided at last. 400 ships. Target orbital assets and military infrastructure only. The order rippled through the fleet. 400 warships detached from formation and accelerated toward Earth, their engines burning like artificial stars. They were fast, heavily armed, and crewed by soldiers eager for their first real battle. On eternal conquest, Vorth watched them go with measured confidence. Whatever humanity was planning, it would not matter. No species without interstellar power had ever stopped a Dominion vanguard. Not once. As the vanguard crossed the orbit of Earth's moon, Vorth allowed himself to relax. That was when the moon fired. There was no warning. No buildup of energy detectable by standard scans. No visible weapon platforms. One moment space was empty. The next, a streak of impossible velocity cut through the void. The lead Dominion ship vanished. Not exploded. Vanished. Alarm screamed across the bridge. What just happened? Tarrant demanded. Before anyone could answer, a second streak appeared. Then a third. Then dozens. Impact detection from lunar surface, a sensor officer shouted. Weapons firing from the moon. That's impossible, Vorth said sharply. The moon has no... Another vanguard ship ceased to exist. Then another. Then 5 more. Vorth stared at the tactical display as red markers bloomed across it. The silence from Earth had not been surrender. It had been preparation. And the destruction had only just begun. For 300 years, High Commander Vorthkul had commanded fleets in the name of the Verith Dominion. He had watched suns burn, planets crack, and civilizations collapse into dust. He had never seen a war begin like this. The vanguard was dying. Not slowly, not gloriously, not even violently, in the way Vorth understood violence. They were simply being erased. Reconfirm targeting data. Vorth barked. What weapons are firing from the moon? The bridge was chaos now. Officers shouted over one another as alarms layered into a constant howl. Energy signatures don't match any known human technology, a science officer said, voice tight. The projectiles are solid mass accelerated to relativistic speeds. Estimated velocity, 8% of light speed. Vorth's 4 eyes narrowed. Kinetic weapons? He said. At that speed? Yes, High Commander. That should tear their launch platforms apart. It would, the officer replied, swallowing. If the platforms were conventional. Another red marker vanished from the tactical display. A Dominion cruiser. Gone. No explosion. No debris field large enough to track. Just a rapidly expanding cloud of ionized particles, spreading like mist. How many vanguard ships lost? Vorth demanded. 26 no, 38 now 42, Tarrant replied. Loss rate increasing. On the lunar surface, the weapons revealed themselves at last. Hidden beneath kilometers of regolith, doors that had never been visible to any orbital skin slid open. Massive structures rose in the moon's crust like ancient titans waking from sleep. long, skeletal barrels aligned with mathematical precision, guided by systems that had been waiting for this exact moment. They fired again. Dozens of tungsten slugs screamed through space, invisible until the instant they struck. Shields designed to absorb stellar flares collapsed as if they were paper. Hulls that had survived supernova shock waves simply ceased to exist. The vanguard broke formation. Order them to retreat. Torrent shouted. They're trying, an officer replied. But the weapons are tracking them, adjusting aim in real time. Vorth felt something cold coil in his chest. This was not luck. This was not desperation. This was preparation. How long have those weapons been there? Vorth asked quietly. The science officer hesitated. Our best estimate, decades, possibly longer. Decades. While the Dominion expanded across galaxies, humanity had been digging into its moon, building weapons in silence, waiting. The Vanguard survivors turned back toward the main fleet, engines burning at emergency output. Of the 400 ships sent forward, fewer than 200 remained intact, and the moon was not finished. New contact appeared on the tactical display. Missiles, thousands of them. They're launching from Earth, an officer said. But these aren't nuclear. The missiles move wrong. They twisted and shimmered, their outlines blurring as if reality itself refused to define them clearly. Dominion targeting systems struggled to lock on. Our sensors can't resolve them, the weapons officer said. They're bending light and gravity around themselves. What do they carry? Vorth asked. The first missile reached the retreating vanguard. It detonated without fire, without sound. A sphere of absolute blackness appeared for a fraction of a second, swallowing a Dominion destroyer whole. Ship, crew, shields, everything gone. When the darkness vanished, there was nothing left. Then another missile detonated. Then 10. Then hundreds. They're using singularities, Torrent whispered. Artificial black holes. That technology doesn't exist, Vorth snapped. It does now. In less than 90 minutes, the Vanguard was annihilated. Of 400 ships, fewer than 200 limped back toward the main fleet, their crews screaming warnings over open channels. The rest had been erased without ever firing a shot. On the bridge of the eternal conquest, silence fell. Vorth stared at the tactical display, his mind racing. His fleet, nearly 10,000 ships, still dwarfed anything humanity could field in space. Numerically, strategically, the Dominion still held overwhelming superiority. But numbers had not mattered to the Vanguard. What else are they hiding? Vorth asked. No one answered. Below, Earth remained silent. On the planet's surface, humanity was moving. Deep beneath mountains, oceans, and deserts, doors long sealed were opening. Facilities that officially did not exist powered up for the first time in generations. Soldiers who had trained in secrecy received coded messages they had memorized decades earlier. Lazarus is rising. In bunkers across the world, men and women stood up from civilian lives and became something else again. Farmers, engineers, teachers, retirees. Weapons older than the invasion and newer than public science allowed were distributed. Exoskeletons locked into place. Interfaces synced with nervous systems. Humanity was not scrambling. It was deploying. Back in orbit, Vorth forced himself to straighten. This change is nothing, he said aloud. They surprised us. That is all. Torrent looked at him, uncertain. We have lost nearly 600 ships, High Commander. And we have over 9,000 remaining, Vorth replied coldly. Do not confuse a clever defense with true power. He turned back to the display, focusing on the planet. Prepare full assault formations, he ordered. I want carriers ready for ground deployment. Ground deployment? Torrent asked. After what we've seen? Yes, Vorth said. The humans have turned space into a trap. Then we will not fight them there. He clenched one fist. No species wins a war by hiding underground forever. The order went out. Across the Vera fleet, assault carriers began moving into position. Massive vessels capable of delivering tens of thousands of soldiers, each aligned for atmospheric entry. Their armor was thick enough to survive orbital fire. Their shields had never failed against planetary weapons. Vorth watched them prepare and felt his confidence return, piece by piece. Whatever tricks humanity had hidden in space, they would not save them on the ground. That was where empires truly fell. On Earth, President Sarachin stood in the deepest command bunker beneath the Capitol. Screens around her showed the destruction in orbit, the wreckage of alien ships tumbling through space. They're regrouping, a general reported, preparing for landings. Chen nodded slowly. Of course they are, she said. She looked at the faces around her. Generals, scientists, operators. People who had known this day was coming their entire adult lives. Then we proceed to Phase 2, she said. What about our space assets? Someone asked quietly. Chen's expression did not change. We have already shown them what happens when they come from above, she replied. Now we show them what happens when they come down. Far above, the Vera the Salt carriers began their descent. They believed the worst was over. They believed they had forced humanity into revealing its hand too early. They were wrong. The silence had been the first weapon. The planet itself was the second. The Vera the Salt carriers entered Earth's atmosphere in disciplined waves. Their shields flaring as friction ignited the air around them. To the crews inside, it felt routine. They had done this on hundreds of worlds. Atmospheric resistance, visual distortion, minor turbulence. Then boots hit the ground. The first landings occurred in deserts, forests, tundra, and plains across the planet. From a Vera perspective, it was textbook doctrine. Establish multiple beachheads, overwhelm defenses through dispersion, deny the enemy a single point to counterattack. From humanity's perspective, it was an invitation. In the Nevada desert, Commander Rexith led the vanguard as ground force out of the carrier's shadow. The city nearby, once a dense cluster of lights and structures, was already rubble, flattened during the opening orbital strikes. Open terrain, clear lines of fire, perfect. Perimeter teams deploy, Rexith ordered. Prepare advance routes. His soldiers fanned out with practiced precision, armor gleaming beneath the harsh sun. Their sensors scanned for movement, heat, electromagnetic signatures. They detected nothing. Too quiet, Rexith thought. The desert exploded. The ground beneath the Vera formation ruptured in synchronized fury. Mines, thousands of them, detonated in cascading patterns. But these were not fragmentation charges or simple explosives. They unleashed focused plasma, electromagnetic pulses, and directed energy beams that sliced through Verith armor like wet cloth. Soldiers died where they stood. Entire squads vanished in white-hot flashes that left nothing behind but scorched glass and twisted metal. Ambush! Rexith shouted. Take cover. There was nowhere to go. The mines had been placed with surgical intent, triggered by mass, heat, and movement. Every step activated another layer of death. Verith units that tried to retreat found themselves running into new kill zones. Units that advanced triggered deeper traps. And still, no humans appeared. Then the drones came. They rose from beneath the sand in swarms so dense they darkened the air. Small, fast, barely larger than birds. Verith targeting systems struggled to track them. Each drone carried a precise charge, designed not for brute force but for penetration. They flew into armor seams, vents, joints. They detonated inside helmets and torsos. The battlefield dissolved into screams and static. Within 10 minutes, half of Rexith's force was dead. Request orbital support, he shouted into his communicator. The answer never came. A drone entered his open mouth and detonated. Across the planet, similar scenes unfolded. In the Black Forest, Verith units advanced through dense trees, confident in their sensors and armor. Human soldiers wearing adaptive exoskeletons move among them like ghosts, appearing only long enough to fire a single devastating shot before vanishing again. The forest itself had been weaponized, trees rigged with directional charges, roots hiding pressure triggers, the very ground unstable beneath alien feet. In the Gobi Desert, Verith formations encountered human fortifications that repaired themselves mid-battle, reshaping under fire to absorb impacts that should have shattered them. Human artillery struck with pinpoint accuracy, guided by targeting data fed from satellites that the Dominion had sworn were destroyed. In the Amazon, The jungle became a nightmare. Rivers carried compounds that ate through Verith armor on contact. Canopies concealed autonomous turrets. Even the animals were dangerous. Some fitted with sensors, others with explosive devices triggered when alien signatures approached. Everywhere the Verith landed, the same pattern emerged. No front lines, no clear targets, no surrender. Humanity did not meet the invasion with a single army. It met it with the planet. On the bridge of the eternal conquest, casualty reports poured in. Ground forces in North America reporting catastrophic losses. An officer said. Europe the same. Asia worse. How many? Vorith demanded. 200,000 in the first day, Torrent replied. And rising. Vorith stared at the numbers, his mind struggling to reconcile them. This was not how primitives fought. They're not defending territory, he muttered. They're hunting. Yes, Torrent said quietly. And they are very good at it. Vorith's jaw tightened. Then we escalate, he said. Authorize full orbital bombardment of resistance zones. Burn their forests. Collapse their cities. Strip the planet until there is nothing left to hide behind. The order rippled through the fleet. Above Earth, Verith warships charged their weapons. Below, humanity watched the sky brighten. President Chin stood in the bunker as reports came in. Millions already dead. Cities reduced to ash. Forests burning from horizon to horizon. How long can our ground forces hold? She asked. Days, General Stone replied. Maybe a week. Longer in some regions. Chin nodded once. Then we use what we have left, she said. Deep beneath mountain ranges and ocean floors, systems long kept dormant began to activate. Weapons humanity had sworn never to use. Not because they were ineffective, but because they were too effective. In Nevada, sunlight focused into a single point from orbital platforms, turning entire Verith armor columns into molten silhouettes etched into glass sand. In Moscow, a tailored plague swept through alien ranks, attacking only Verith biology. Soldiers collapsed where they stood, their armor intact, their bodies failing from the inside out. In East Asia, machines buried deep underground induced localized earthquakes, swallowing entire battalions into the earth. The Verith had prepared for nuclear war. They had not prepared for this. What kind of species builds weapons like these? Vorith demanded as more reports arrived. One that expects to be invaded, Torrent replied. By the end of the second day, the invasion force was bleeding on every front. Millions of soldiers dead, thousands more wounded or trapped, supply lines severed, morale collapsing. And still, humanity did not surrender. Vorith felt something he had not felt in centuries. Fear, not of defeat, but of continuation. Because this planet was not breaking. It was adapting. And worse, it was enjoying the fight. By the third day of the invasion, the Verith Dominion no longer controlled the tempo of the war. They reacted. High Commander Vorith stood motionless on the bridge of the eternal conquest, watching casualty figures climb beyond anything he had believed possible. Entire ground divisions had gone silent. Assault carriers were returning half-empty, scarred, or not returning at all. This world should have fallen within hours, he said quietly. No one contradicted him. The Verith had conquered planets that fought harder with far less resistance. Civilizations that wielded advanced technology had collapsed once their command centers were destroyed. Others had broken when their populations realized resistance was futile. Earth didn't either. Earth absorbed punishment, adapted, and struck back harder. Human forces are modifying tactics in real time, a science officer reported. They are analyzing our weapons, adjusting armor, changing battlefield geometry. How fast? Vorith asked. Hours. Sometimes minutes. That earned murmurs across the bridge. That's not possible, one officer said. Doctrine requires testing, approval. They don't have doctrine, Torrent interrupted. They improvise. Vorith turned slowly. What? They are not waiting for orders, Torrent continued. Local commanders are acting independently. Scientists, engineers, civilians, everyone is contributing. They share information instantly through decentralized networks. When one of our weapons is used, they counter it almost immediately. Vortha's claws tightened. Chaos, he said. That kind of system collapses. It hasn't, Torrent replied. It's accelerating. Before Vorth could respond, alarms flared again. New contacts emerging from Earth, an officer shouted. Multiple locations. Subterranean and subaquatic. Vorth leaned forward. Show me. The main display shifted. Across the planet, the impossible was happening. Mountains split open. Oceans churned as massive shapes rose from the depths. Ice sheets cracked in Antarctica, revealing hangars hidden beneath kilometers of frozen wasteland. Ships, sleek, black, angular, lifted into the sky without rockets, without exhaust, without sound. Human warships. Dozens of them. No, Vorth whispered. They were smaller than Dominion vessels. Lighter, faster, built for precision rather than brute force. Gravity drives bent space around them, allowing maneuvers that should have torn them apart. How many? Vorth demanded. 62 confirmed, came a reply. 62, against thousands. Vorth felt a surge of grim satisfaction. So that's it, he said. Their last defense. He straightened. All ships, he ordered. Engage those vessels immediately. Concentrate fire. Wipe them from space. The Verith fleet responded as one. Plasma fire lit the void. Missiles streaked toward the emerging human ships in dense clouds. The humans did not retreat. They accelerated. The first human ship to fire was a Defiance. Its weapon did not resemble anything in Dominion databases. There was no beam, no visible projectile. Space itself seemed to compress along a narrow line, then snap back violently. A Verith cruiser folded inward like crushed foil. What was that? An officer demanded. Gravitational weapon, the science officer said, stunned. They're manipulating localized space-time. That technology doesn't exist, Vorth finished. I know. The human ships spread out, darting between Dominion formations. They targeted engines, weapon mounts, command nodes. They attacked at point-blank range, where shields were weakest. Verith gunners struggled to track them. They're too fast. They're predicting our fire. They're turning inside our firing arcs. A human pilot in a ship barely a tenth the mass of a Dominion destroyer skimmed past its hull, fired a burst at an exposed conduit, and vanished before return fire could lock. Human losses came quickly. A ship named Spirit of Tokyo was caught in overlapping fire and torn apart. Its crew did not eject. They redirected power to engines and rammed a carrier, detonating both. Another, Amazon Dawn, lost shields and weaponry but continued firing until its reactor went critical, taking multiple Verith ships with it. They're not retreating, Torrent said, disbelief creeping into his voice. They know they're outnumbered. They don't care, Vorth replied. The realization struck him like a physical blow. These humans were not fighting to win cleanly. They were fighting to make the Dominion bleed. Hour after hour, the battle raged. Human ships died, but every loss cost a Verith dearly. By the time the firing slowed, 38 human vessels were gone. Only 24 remained. But a Verith fleet had lost more than 800 ships. Vorth stared at the updated numbers. How? He whispered. Torrent answered softly. They fight like a species that refuses to accept extinction. Vorth's expression hardened. Then we end this, he said. All remaining ships, prepare orbital bombardment. Target population centers. Break their will. As the Verith fleet repositioned, Vorth failed to notice one detail. The surviving human ships were not withdrawing. They were regrouping. And far below, humanity prepared its most desperate move yet. The surviving human ships gathered around the Defiance like wounded predators refusing to leave the hunt. Their hulls were scorched, patched with temporary repairs, entire sections held together by emergency fields and sheer stubbornness. Crews worked in silence, hands shaking from exhaustion, eyes burning with something far stronger than fear. Admiral Chun Wei stood on the bridge of the Defiance, watching the Verith fleet reposition. They're preparing to glass the planet, her tactical officer said. Population centers first. Chen nodded once. I expected that. Admiral, we have 24 ships left. Most of them can barely fight. I know. A younger officer hesitated before speaking. We can retreat, preserve what remains, move the fleet to deep orbit. Chin turned to face them. If we leave, she said calmly, those guns fire, and Earth burns. Silence followed. Every person on that bridge understood the math. 24 damaged ships against thousands of enemy warships. No reinforcements. No second chance. This was not a battle that could be won. It was a moment to be chosen. Open a channel, Chin said. The communication officer obeyed. Her image appeared on every remaining human vessel. This is Admiral Chunwei, she said. You all know the situation. The enemy is preparing a full bombardment. If they fire, billions die. She paused, meeting the eyes of her crews through the camera. I will not order you to stay. Anyone who chooses to withdraw will not be judged. You have already given more than anyone could ask. No one spoke. No ship moved. Chin allowed herself a small, sad smile. Very well, she said. Then we attack. A ripple of quiet acknowledgement passed through the fleet. Chin turned back to her officers. All ships, form up on my position, she ordered. We target their command structure. If we're going to die, we take their head with us. The defiance accelerated. The Verith fleet reacted instantly. They're charging us, a Verith officer reported. All remaining human vessels. Vorithkul stared at the display. Madness, he said. Concentrate fire. Destroy them before they reach us. The void erupted. Thousands of weapons fired at once, turning space into a storm of plasma, missiles, and raw energy. The human ships plunged forward anyway, weaving through the barrage, burning engines far beyond safe limits. One by one, they died. The Cairo star vanished in a blossom of fire. The Sol Phoenix lost half its hull and kept firing until it was torn apart. The European Unity took a direct hit to its reactor and detonated, obliterating everything around it. 8 ships remaining, Chen's officer said. Then 7. Then 6. The Defiance shuddered as shields collapsed. Fires broke out across multiple decks. The bridge filled with smoke and warning sirens. Admiral, the helmsman said, voice tight, we're not going to make it. Chen studied the tactical display. They were still too far from the Verith flagship, but she was not aiming for it anymore. Change course, she said. Take us toward the troop carriers. The helmsman hesitated. Ma'am. Do it. The Defiance veered sharply, plunging toward a dense cluster of Verith carriers preparing to deploy more ground forces. On the Verith bridge, confusion spread. They're breaking off, an officer said, redirecting toward our carriers. Vorith frowned. Why? The answer came seconds later. Admiral, the engineer whispered. She's armed to self-destruct. Chin stood from her chair. Set yield to maximum, she ordered. The officer stared at her. That will annihilate us. Yes, Chin said quietly. And, she looked around the bridge, at the men and women who had followed her into a battle. They all knew they would not survive. It has been an honor, she said. The Defiance screamed through space, its hull tearing apart under the strain. Verith weapons hammered it from all sides, ripping away armor and decks. It did not slow. Chin reached the console. She pressed a button. The Defiance exploded with the force of a newborn star. The blast tore through the carrier formation, vaporizing 12 massive ships instantly and crippling dozens more. Shock waves rippled through the surrounding fleet, overwhelming shields and snapping hulls. 50,000 Verith soldiers died in less than a second. On Earth, sensors lit up as the explosion bloomed in orbit. President Chin closed her eyes. Her sister was gone, but the sky was still burning with enemy ships. On Eternal Conquest, Vor staggered as the blast wave rocked his flagship. What was that? He demanded. Human flagship, an officer replied. They detonated their own reactor. Vor stared at the tactical display, watching the wreckage drift. They chose to die, he said slowly, on their own terms. Torrent said nothing, because for the first time, Vorth Cole understood the truth. These humans were not fighting to survive. They were fighting to decide how they died. And they were very good at choosing moments that hurt. As the debris cleared, the Verith fleet regrouped once more. They still had thousands of ships. Earth still burned. The humans had lost their space fleet. Victory, by any rational measure, was still possible. But Vorth no longer felt confident. He felt hunted. And far below, on the surface of Earth, humanity prepared the next move, one that would ensure the enemy could never leave unscarred. The destruction of the Defiance did not end the war. It transformed it. In the hours that followed, the Verith Dominion regrouped, reformed firing lines, and resumed orbital bombardment. Cities burned. Oceans boiled in places where plasma strikes hit shallow waters. Entire regions vanished beneath curtains of fire. From orbit, Earth looked wounded, but it was still fighting. Deep beneath the Rocky Mountains, in a facility so old that even its original designers were long dead, Project Prometheus came fully online for the first time. Dr. Elena Rodriguez stood before the primary control ray, her hand steady despite the alarm screaming through the underground complex. She had spent 30 years of her life preparing for this moment. 30 years knowing she prayed it would never come. "It's ready," her assistant Maria Chun said quietly. "All containment systems are green." Rodriguez closed her eyes for half a second. "This device was never meant to be used," she said. "It was a theory, a last answer to a question no one wanted to ask." Maria swallowed. "The enemy fleet is clustering over the eastern hemisphere. They're concentrating fire." Rodriguez nodded. "Of course they are," she said. "That's how conquerors think." She looked at the display showing Earth's orbit, thousands of Verith ships forming a tight, lethal web around the planet. "If we activate Prometheus at full power," Maria said carefully, "we won't be able to shut it down. The energy feedback will destroy this facility." Rodriguez met her gaze. "I know." There was a long silence between them. "Evacuation is complete," Maria continued. "Everyone else is out." Rodriguez smiled faintly. "Then we're exactly where we need to be." Above them, the Verith fleet prepared to end the war. High Commander Vorth Cole watched as targeting solutions finalized across his displays. "All ships," he ordered, "begin sustained orbital bombardment. Crack their resistance. Break their planet." Plasma cannons charged. Then space screamed. At first, the Verith sensors did not understand what they were seeing. Gravitational readings spiked beyond safe limits. Energy flows twisted into impossible shapes. "What is happening?" Vorth demanded. "Our instruments," the science officer began, then stopped. "They're failing. Space itself is destabilizing." In orbit above North America, reality tore open. Not a hyperspace gate, not a wormhole, a wound. Light bent inward, disappearing into a growing distortion that devoured everything near it. Verith ships closest to the anomaly were dragged toward it, engines flaring uselessly as gravity turned against them. "What weapon is this?" Torrent shouted. "I don't know," the officer replied. "It's not an explosion. It's a collapse. They're tearing space apart." Ship after ship vanished into the wound. Shields collapsed. Hulls twisted. Crews screamed as their vessels stretched and shattered, pulled into nothingness. "Pull back!" Vorth roared. "All ships, reverse course." Too late. Over 300 Verith warships were consumed before the distortion collapsing on itself, snapping reality back into place with a thunderous shockwave that rippled across orbit. Silence followed. On Earth, seismic sensors spiked as the Prometheus facility began to fail. The ground shook violently. Consoles overloaded. "It's destabilizing." Maria shouted. "Power levels are exceeding containment." Rodriguez nodded calmly. "Good," she said. "That means it worked." The ceiling cracked. Dust rained down. "Doctor," Maria said softly, "we don't have to stay?" Rodriguez looked at her. "Yes," she replied. "We do." She placed her hand over Maria's. "We always knew this was a one-way system," she said. "Humanity doesn't survive by accident. It survives because someone stays behind." Maria took a breath and straightened. "Then let's finish it," she said. They triggered the final sequence together. The facility collapsed in a controlled implosion, sealing the remains of Prometheus beneath millions of tons of rock. The weapon was gone, but its message was not. On eternal conquest, Vorath stared at the aftermath. 300 ships gone. Just gone. What kind of species builds a weapon like that? He whispered. One that plans for extinction, Torrent replied, and refuses to accept it. Vorath felt the cold certainty settle in his chest. They were losing, not because they lacked firepower, not because they lacked numbers, but because they were fighting an enemy that had already accepted death and weaponized it. We continue, Vorath said at last. We have come too far to retreat. But his voice lacked conviction now. Across the Verith fleet, morale cracked. Officers questioned orders. Crews whispered about curses and forbidden worlds. Reports flooded in from ground forces still trapped on Earth, begging for evacuation. Casualties climbed into the millions, and still humanity fought. President Chin watched the orbital feeds as the Prometheus event ended. They lost hundreds of ships, General Stone said, but they're still there. Chin nodded slowly. They won't leave yet, she said. Not until they're forced to understand. How do we make them understand? Chin looked at the screen, showing the Verith flagship. We remove their certainty, she said. We take away the one thing holding them together. Stone's eyes widened. You're talking about their command. Yes, Chin said. If we can't defeat the fleet, we break its mind. Far above, Vorath stood on the bridge of his flagship, staring at a planet that refused to die. He did not see the stolen Verith shuttles lifting from Earth's surface. He did not notice the forged access codes transmitting. And he did not yet understand that humanity was no longer trying to survive the war. They were preparing to end it from the inside. The Verith flagship Eternal Conquest was a city in motion. 10,000 crew members moved through its corridors at all hours, guided by doctrine older than most civilizations humanity had ever known. Its security systems were layered, redundant, and ruthless. Nothing hostile had ever boarded it, which was why no one noticed the shuttle. It emerged from Earth's shadow on minimal power, its hull scorched and patched with mismatched plating. Its transponder broadcast Verith authentication codes pulled from captured systems, recycled and adjusted by human engineers who had learned very quickly how their enemy thought. On the bridge, Vorath Kull watched the tactical display, his attention fixed on the planet below. Ground resistance remains high, Torrent reported. Our forces are sustaining heavy losses during withdrawal attempts. Vorath said nothing. He had not slept in days. His eyes burned. His mind replayed images he could not erase. Ships vanishing. Soldiers screaming. A planet that refused a break. He did not see the internal alert flash for half a second. Then it vanished. On Deck 37, a maintenance bay door slid open. The Hellhounds stepped out. They moved fast and quiet. 50 soldiers in adaptive armor darkened to absorb light. Their weapons were alien in origin, human in modification. Stripped down for close quarters lethality. No insignia. No flags. Only purpose. Calm, silent, Sergeant Maria Santos whispered. Stack up. They advanced to the corridor like a single organism, covering angles, reading shadows, anticipating movement. When Verith crew members appeared, they died before they could react. Silent shots, blades, broken necks, no alarms. The Verith were looking outward. That was their mistake. Checkpoint ahead, a scout murmured. 20 guards. Santos nodded once. Breaching charges, she said. On my mark. The charges detonated in perfect synchronization. The corridor filled with smoke and shrapnel. Before the guards could recover, the Hellhounds were through, weapons flashing. Seconds later, it was quiet again. On the bridge, a junior officer frowned. High Commander, he said carefully. We're receiving intermittent internal security alerts. Vorath waved a hand dismissively. Damage control, he said. This ship has taken hits. Handle it. Yes, High Commander. The Hellhounds moved deeper. They lost people along the way. A security turret caught one team in a crossfire. A blast door sealed unexpectedly, crushing a soldier before it could be stopped. Varith reinforcements began to converge. But the humans did not slow. They could see the bridge doors now. Massive, reinforced, designed to withstand direct bombardment. Charges? Santos asked. Set, her demolitions expert replied. High yield. Behind them, Varith security forces poured into the corridor, weapons blazing. The hellhounds formed a firing line, returning fire with brutal efficiency. Detonate, Santos ordered. The explosion tore the bridge doors apart. Santos was through the smoke before it cleared. The bridge was chaos. Varith officers scrambled for weapons. Guards tried to form a defensive perimeter. At the center of it all stood High Commander Vorith Kull. Turning slowly, disbelief etched across his features. Humans! On his ship. Santos raised her weapon. Vorith moved faster than she expected. He reached for a sidearm, firing a shot that scorched her shoulder. Pain flared white and hot. She fired back. The round struck Vorith in the chest, staggering him but not dropping him. Varith physiology absorbed damage that would have killed a human instantly. You are animals, Vorith snarled. Advancing, you should have surrendered. Santos fired again. And again. Each shot drove him backward, green blood splattering the deck. His guards fell around him as the remaining hellhounds poured fire into the bridge. Vorith fell to one knee. He looked up at Santos, disbelief giving way to something else. Fear. We are humans, Santos said, stepping closer. And we don't kneel. She pressed the weapon to his head. She pulled the trigger. High Commander Vorith Kull, Conqueror of Worlds, died on the bridge of his flagship. For a heartbeat, the galaxy seemed to hold its breath. Then alarm screamed. Commander down, a Varith officer shouted. High Commander is... The hellhounds did not wait. Charges on the reactor, Santos ordered. All of them. Her team moved fast, planting explosives as Varith reinforcements flooded the bridge. The humans fought with the desperation of people who knew there was no escape. One by one, they fell. By the time the charges were set, only 6 hellhounds remained. Santos looked at them. We did the job, she said. You know what comes next. No one argued. She activated a nearby camera feed, knowing Earth's intelligence networks were watching. Message to command, she said. Target neutralized. The hellhounds send their regards. She smiled. It was not a happy smile. It was a satisfied one. The reactor detonated. The eternal conquest tore itself apart from the inside. Fire raced through its core. Secondary explosions rippled outward. Consuming escort vessels caught too close. The flagship broke into fragments, each trailing flame and debris. In orbit around Earth, the Varith fleet shuddered. Orders stopped coming. Formations drifted. Captains looked at their displays and saw the unthinkable. Their commander was gone. On Earth, President Chen watched the flagship die. For the first time since the invasion began, she allowed herself to hope. But the war was not over yet. The most dangerous moment was about to begin, because a wounded empire does not retreat quietly. The explosion of the eternal conquest sent a shockwave through the Varith fleet that no sensor could measure. For centuries, their wars have been guided by certainty. Orders flowed from the flagship. Doctrine was absolute. Victory was expected. Now there was silence. Across thousands of warships, Varith captains stare at command displays that no longer updated. Channels that had always carried the High Commander's voice were empty. What are our orders? One captain asked. No one answered. On the cruiser Blade of Justice, Second Commander Torrent watched the debris field where the flagship had been. Fire still burned among the wreckage. Bodies drifted, frozen and spinning slowly through space. Vorith Kull was dead, killed by humans, boarded, executed, erased. For the first time in 200 years of war, Torrent felt something tighten in his chest. Not anger, not rage, fear. Status report, he said quietly. A tactical officer swallowed. Flagship destroyed. 93 escort vessels lost in the blast radius. Command and control is offline across the fleet. How many ships do we have left? Approximately 6,800, Commander. Torrent nodded slowly. They had arrived with nearly 10,000. and Earth still stood. On the ground, Varith landing forces felt the change immediately. Orders stopped arriving. Air support failed to respond. Coordinated assaults dissolved into isolated skirmishes. Human resistance intensified. In ruined cities, human units surged forward, striking withdrawing Varith columns with renewed ferocity. Ambushes multiplied. Supply convoys vanished. The humans could feel it. The enemy was disoriented. On Earth, President Chin stood in the deepest bunker beneath the Capitol, surrounded by flickering displays. They're losing cohesion. General Stone reported. Enemy formations are breaking down. Ground forces are attempting emergency extraction. Chin nodded. Good, she said. Do not let them leave cleanly. Stone hesitated. Madam President, we're running low on strategic weapons. I know. And our losses... I know, she repeated more softly. But this is the moment. If they escape without consequence, they'll come back. Stronger, smarter. She met his eyes. We end this here. In orbit, Torrent convened an emergency command council aboard the Blade of Justice. Senior officers appeared on fracture hollow displays, their expressions grim. We must withdraw. Torrent said immediately, this invasion has failed. Murmurs spread through the chamber. With respect, one officer said, we still outnumber them. We can continue the bombardment. Crack the planet's crust as planned. Torrent turned toward him. And gain what? He asked. A dead world? A fleet shattered beyond recovery. Another officer spoke. The Dominion Council will not accept retreat. The Council is not here, Torrent replied coldly. We are, and if we continue this war, there will be no fleet left to explain ourselves. Silence followed. Commander, a science officer said hesitantly, human counterattacks are increasing. They are targeting our engines and jump-capable vessels specifically. Torrent closed his eyes for a moment. They were learning. Of course they were. Signal all ships, Torrent ordered. Begin phase withdrawal. Ground forces are disengaged and return to transports immediately. A stunned pause. You're ordering a retreat? Someone asked. Yes, Torrent said. I am. Across the fleet, the order spread. Some captains felt relief. Others felt shame. A few felt rage. But all obeyed. The Varith began pulling back, ships maneuvering toward a rally point beyond the moon, preparing for a hyperspace jump. On Earth, human commanders watched the movement with suspicion. They're forming up, General Stone said. Looks like a full withdrawal. Chen's eyes narrowed. Do not trust it, she said. Track every ship, every transport. As Varith ground forces pulled back, humans attacked relentlessly. Retreating units were ambushed. Extraction zones turned into killing fields. Varith soldiers died in droves, cut down by enemies who refused to allow mercy. Even in victory, humanity demanded payment. In orbit, Torrent watched casualty numbers climb as the fleet struggled to disengage. How many ships are too damaged to jump? He asked. Hundreds, an officer replied. We're abandoning them. Torrent nodded. It was brutal, but necessary. At the rally point, Varith ships assembled, battered, and scarred. Hyperspace drives spun up, energy fields forming. Prepare to jump, Torrent ordered. That was when the humans struck again. Missiles erupted from hidden platforms on the moon. Railgun slugs screamed through space from positions the Varith had believed destroyed. Drones that had played dead among wreckage activated, slamming into engines and reactors. The Varith shields were down. They had lowered them to prepare for hyperspace. Ships began to die. Emergency jump, Torrent shouted. Now! Purple wounds tore open in space as hyperspace portals formed. Varith ships dove toward them, desperate to escape. Then the humans triggered their final trap. Gravitational mines detonated near the jump point, warping space-time itself. Hyperspace portals destabilized. Ships were torn apart mid-transition, crushed by conflicting forces. Abort jump, someone screamed. Too late. Dozens of ships vanished in silent implosions. Torrenta's cruiser shook violently as debris slammed against its hull. New coordinates, he barked. Find a clean exit. We have one narrow vector, the navigator replied. We'll lose ships reaching it. Do it, Terence said. Anyone who can follow, follow. The blade of justice surged forward, slipping through the collapsing jump corridor just as weapons fire lit up the space behind it. When hyperspace enveloped them, the noise of battle vanished. Silence fell. Terence exhaled slowly. How many made it? He asked. The tactical officer checked the final count. 17, Commander, he said quietly. 17 ships. Terence closed his eyes. They had come with an armada. They were leaving with a warning. Behind them, Earth burned, but it still lived. And the galaxy would never forget what it had done to an empire that thought itself unstoppable. The journey back to Dominion space took 3 weeks. 3 weeks of silence. Aboard the surviving 17 ships, Verith crews moved like ghosts through scorched corridors. Med bays overflowed. Engineers worked without rest, patching hulls held together by emergency fields and luck. No one spoke unless necessary. They had survived, and none of them felt victorious. Second Commander Terence spent most of the journey alone in his quarters aboard the Blade of Justice. He stared at the stars sliding past the viewport, replaying the war again and again in his mind. Every decision, every mistake, every human act that had shattered Vera's certainty. He began writing his report on the first day. He rewrote it every day after, because no matter how he phrased it, the truth sounded impossible. When the fleet finally emerged from hyperspace above the Dominion capital world, the sight should have inspired pride. Instead, it filled Terence with dread. 17 ships, out of nearly 10,000. Docking bays opened in silence. Escorts formed a respectful but wary perimeter. News of the disaster had already spread. Crews and officials watched from observation decks, their expressions unreadable. Terence was summoned immediately. The Dominion Council chamber was vast, carved from black stone, and lit by starlight filtered through crystalline arches. Dozens of counselors sat in their elevated seats, ancient and powerful, their attention fixed on a lone figure standing at the center. Terence stood straight. He did not kneel. You were sent to conquer a primitive world, the High Counselor said. You returned with 17 ships. Explain. Terence took a breath. They are not primitive, he said. Murmurs rippled through the chamber. You lost nearly the entire invasion fleet. Another counselor said coldly, to a species that has not achieved interstellar dominance. They achieved something more dangerous, Terence replied. Adaptation. The council demanded details. Terence gave them everything. He described the moon batteries that fire at fractions of light speed, the missiles that created artificial singularities, the ground weapons that targeted Verith biology specifically, the boarding action that killed High Commander Vorith. He did not soften the truth. They boarded our flagship, he said. They killed our commander with small arms. Then they destroyed the ship from the inside. The chamber erupted. Impossible. No species would attempt that. They must have been desperate. Yes, Terence said. They were, and they chose to use that desperation as a weapon. The High Counselor leaned forward. How many humans died? Millions, Terence answered. Possibly tens of millions. And they continued fighting? Yes. Even when their fleet was destroyed? Yes. Even when their cities burned? Yes. Silence returned. They do not fight to win territory, Terence continued. They fight to deny victory. They fight to make conquest cost more than it is worth. One counselor scoffed. Then we sent a larger fleet. 20,000 ships. 30,000. Terence shook his head. It will not matter, he said. That earned him laughter. You suggest we fear a single world? I suggest we respect it, Terence replied. By the time another fleet arrives, they will have studied everything we did. They will build new weapons, better ones. He looked around the chamber. They learn faster than we do. The counselors exchanged uneasy glances. They are chaotic, Terence said. There is no central command to destroy, no doctrine to break. Every human is a potential soldier. Every civilian is a weapon maker. And their morale, the High Counselor asked. Tarrant hesitated. Then he answered honestly. They enjoy it, he said. Not the suffering, the resistance, the defiance. They take pride in standing against impossible odds. The room grew colder. What do you recommend? The High Counselor asked. Tarrant inhaled slowly. Avoid them, he said. Do not provoke them. Do not threaten their world. Mark their system as forbidden. Outrage exploded. You would have us retreat from the stars. You would label us cowards? You failed, and now you fear them. Tarrant did not raise his voice. I fear them because I understand them, he said. If we attack again, they will not merely defend. They will pursue. That stopped the shouting. Pursue? The High Council repeated. Yes, Tarrant said. They do not forget, and now they know we exist. The council deliberated for hours. When the decision came, it was delivered without ceremony. Earth was classified as a forbidden world. No Dominion ship was to approach within 10 light years. Tarrant was sentenced to exile for failure. He accepted it without protest. As he was escorted from the chamber, he looked once more at the stars. He wondered how long the council believed distance would protect them. Years passed. Earth rebuilt. Cities rose from ash. Scars remained, visible reminders of what had been survived. Human technology advanced at a terrifying pace, fueled by the memory of invasion and loss. 40 years later, Dominion sensors detected unfamiliar ships at the edge of controlled space. They did not arrive with weapons charged. They broadcast greetings, offers of trade, requests for diplomacy. Human ships. The Dominion received them with fear, disguised as courtesy. Treaties were signed, concessions granted. No one refused the humans anything, because everyone remembered the story. 17 ships. One counselor asked Tarrant, long exiled and nearly forgotten, if his warning had been exaggerated. Tarrant answered with a single sentence. They fought us before they were ready, he said. Imagine what they are now. And somewhere under a yellow star, humanity continued to grow, smiling, learning, waiting. 40 years after the invasion, the story of Earth was no longer classified. It was whispered in military academies. Instructors spoke of it as a case study in catastrophic miscalculation. In trading guilds, merchants used it as a warning when plotting new routes. Among soldiers, it was told in low voices, always ending the same way. Do not provoke the humans. The Dominion had marked Earth as forbidden, but the mark did not bring peace. It brought curiosity. Humanity rebuilt faster than anyone had predicted. Cities were redesigned with defense woven into architecture. Civilian industries blurred into military capability. Research once hidden in bunkers moved into orbiting laboratories and deep space shipyards. The humans did not prepare for another invasion. They prepared to leave. When the first human vessels appeared at the edge of Dominion space, they did so openly. Their weapons were powered down. Their hulls bore no visible armaments. Their transmissions were calm, polite, almost friendly. The Dominion Council received them with rehearsed confidence and genuine terror. They remembered the report. They remembered the number. 17. Ambassador Elena Santos walked through the council chamber with measured steps. She was young by human standards, her expression composed, her posture relaxed. She wore no armor, carried no visible weapon, but everyone in the chamber knew her name. Santos. My grandmother died in the Earth War, she said during the opening session, her voice steady. She led the boarding team that killed your high commander. The chamber froze. One counselor found his voice. We regret the loss of life on both sides. Elena smiled. Do not, she replied. She died exactly how she wanted, fighting for our survival. No one argued. Humanity's diplomatic demands were modest. Trade access, navigation rights, shared scientific forums. No territory, no tribute. The Dominion agreed to everything, because behind every polite request was the memory of a planet that had burned rather than bow. Over time, human presence spread, not as conquerors, but as neighbors no one dared antagonize. Their ships grew larger, sleeker, more advanced. Their technology integrated lessons learned from Varith weapons, adapted and improved. They never forgot. In exile, Taranth watched it all unfold. He lived on a quiet world far from the core, his days spent staring at the stars. He had expected to die forgotten. Instead, humans came to see him. They asked questions. They listened. They learned. One day, Elena Santos visited him personally. "You warned your people," she said. "They didn't listen." Taranth nodded. "They rarely do." She studied him for a long moment. "You told them we were dangerous." "I told them the truth," he replied. "You are not dangerous because you fight well. You are dangerous because you refuse to accept limits." Elena smiled faintly. "That's accurate." Before she left, she asked one final question. If the Dominion attacked again, she said, what would happen? Taranth did not hesitate. "You would not defend Earth," he said. "You would bring the war to us." She did not deny it. Years passed. Humanity became a permanent part of galactic affairs. Conflicts flared elsewhere, but none involved Earth. No fleet ever approached the Sol system without permission. Fear did what diplomacy could not. And yet, humans were not cruel rulers of their reputation. They traded fairly. They honored treaties. They laughed, celebrated, explored. But everyone knew the line. The legend spread beyond the Dominion. Across the galaxy, species told their young the story of the small blue world orbiting an ordinary yellow star. They spoke of the armada that arrived with nearly 10,000 ships, and the 17 that left. The story changed over time. Details blurred. Numbers grew. Myths formed. But the core never changed. Humans had been found, and the galaxy had nearly paid the price. On Earth, memorials stood where cities had once burned. Names were etched into stone, metal, and memory. Soldiers, scientists, civilians, people who had stayed behind so others could live. Children learned the history early, not to glorify war, but to understand the cost of survival. One night, decades later, a human warship passed to the edge of known space. It did not fire. It did not threaten. It simply existed. A reminder. Somewhere, in a distant system, a young alien officer watched the ship on a sensor display and asked his commander a simple question. "Why do we give them so much space?" he asked. The commander answered without looking away. "Because once," he said, "we tried to take their world." The human ship vanished into the stars, and the galaxy, older and wiser now, remembered the lesson written in fire and blood. Never mistake silence for weakness. Never mistake kindness for surrender. And never forget the day humanity showed the universe what it was willing to become, to survive,